Hey everyone, thanks for being here. The revenge story you're about to hear takes place in a bustling neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. My name is Jazz, and the day my sister quietly sold our grandma's brownstone, she didn't even have the courage to call me. My phone lit up with a short, cold message. Sold grandma's place. Thanks for not being there. No emojis, no explanations, just a digital knife slid between my ribs. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen, feeling my pulse roaring in my ears. That brownstone wasn't just an address, it was the first place I ever felt safe, the one constant in a childhood where everything else kept shifting. It was where my grandma, Eleanor, looked me in the eye one summer night and said, "You're the one who understands what this house really means." And now my own sister had traded it away like an old piece of furniture. My thumb hovered over the keyboard before I finally typed the only thing that came to mind. "You sold it? Are you sure about that?" I hit send, my hands trembling, not just with hurt, but with something sharper. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a declaration of war. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call any relatives. I called the one person who knew both my history and the law. When I sent him the documents, he didn't look shocked. He laughed. Actually laughed. "She just made a very stupid mistake," he said, eyes glinting in a way that made the hairs on my arms stand up, "and she has no idea what's coming." Before I tell you what he said next and what happened after I walked out of his office, tell me what time it is for you right now and where you're watching from. I'm genuinely curious how far my grandmother's story will travel. By the next morning, anger had settled into something colder and much more dangerous. Focus. I barely slept, replaying my sister's message until every word felt carved into my skull. When I finally stepped into the small corner coffee shop I used to study in during college, I wasn't just a hurt little sister anymore. I was someone who'd had enough. My childhood best friend, now as sharp as a tack lawyer, was already there. "Jack," I said, calling his name aloud like I was pulling a weapon from its sheath. He stood up, concern written all over his face. "Jazz, sit. Tell me everything." So I did. I told him about my sister, Hannah, about the text, about how our grandmother, Eleanor, had always said the brownstone would be my anchor when life got rough. I told him how Hannah had always rolled her eyes at that, how she'd joke that Grandma treated me like the chosen one. Jack listened without interrupting, flipping through the printouts I'd brought, screenshots of texts, photos of the brownstone, copies of old emails. "The house isn't just sentimental," I said, my voice tight. "It's part of her will." "I know it is. We talked about it. I promised her I'd take care of it, that I wouldn't let it fall into the wrong hands." For a moment, I heard my grandmother's voice in my head, as clearly as if she were sitting at the next table. "Some walls hold secrets. Some walls hold promises. Never confuse the two." I swallowed hard and pushed the memory aside. Jack tapped one of the pages. "If Hannah sold the house without your consent, and if this signature is forged, she's in serious trouble, legally and personally. She didn't just cross a line, Jazz. She jumped off a cliff." His words sent a strange electric thrill through me. I wasn't powerless, I had leverage. While he scanned the documents more closely, I opened my laptop right there and started building a file. Every birthday card Grandma had signed, every email where she mentioned the house, every message from Hannah hinting at money problems. I watched the folder grow, and with it, my resolve. Midway through my frantic collecting, my phone buzzed. Hannah again. "Don't turn this into drama," she wrote. "You were never around anyway." I actually did something responsible. For a second, my hand shook with the urge to call her and scream. Instead, I slid the phone across the table to Jack. He raised an eyebrow. "You know," he said slowly, "I've seen siblings do petty things over money, but forging a dead grandmother's wishes." He glanced up at me, his expression hardening. "She'll regret this more than she can imagine." I stared at Hannah's message and felt something inside me click into place. Maybe she thought I would choose family peace over confrontation. Maybe she believed I'd stay quiet to avoid looking like the difficult sister. But I remembered the last night I spent at Grandma's, sitting on the front steps, the old woman's hand wrapped around mine as she whispered, "If they ever try to sell what's meant to protect you, fight back. Even if it's family." So, let me ask you this. If your own sibling sold the one thing you promised to protect, would you choose blood or the promise? By the time I left the cafe, my grief had hardened into something like armor. I took the rest of the day off, sat at my tiny kitchen table in my Brooklyn apartment, and started pulling every public record I could find on the sale. Property transfers, county filings, deeds. Eventually, one name kept appearing beside Hannah's. Victor Grant. At first, it just looked like another rich buyer picking up an old bargain to flip. But the more I stared at the name, the more a strange unease crawled up my spine. That night, I dreamt of my grandmother sitting in her faded armchair, the soft lamplight haloing her silver hair. In the dream, she wasn't warm or laughing. She was serious. "Don't trust the man who smiles with empty eyes," she murmured. When I woke up, heart pounding, the name Victor was still echoing in my head. I called Jack the moment the sun came up. "I need everything on this man," I told him. "If he's clean, fine. But if he's not, I want to know exactly how dirty he is." "Already on it," Jack said. I ran his name through a few databases last night. There are whispers. Lawsuits that settled quietly. Complaints that never made it to court. He's got a pattern. Distressed properties, vulnerable families, oddly fast sales. And there's one more thing. He visited your grandmother a few times in the last year of her life. My stomach twisted. "Why?" "That's what I want to find out," he replied. "But something tells me he didn't just appear out of kindness." I spent the afternoon scrolling through old photos on my hard drive, trying to see if he ever showed up in the background. Family barbecues, holiday dinners, random Sunday visits. In one grainy shot I barely remembered taking, a man stood near the fence, face turned away, but posture familiar, too comfortable, too casual, like someone who thought he belonged there. A chill ran through me, as if on cue. My phone buzzed. A new message from Hannah. A photo of Grandma's brownstone, but different. My brownstone. The front yard was torn up. A construction sign slapped in the grass. "Progress looks good, doesn't it?" she wrote. "This place will finally be worth something." My jaw clenched. Finally be worth something. It had always been worth everything. "You think money is the only kind of value?" I typed, then erased. Instead, I forwarded the picture to Jack. "He's moving fast," I said when we jumped on a call. "Of course he is," Jack answered. "Guys like Victor don't like daylight. The faster they build, sell, and disappear, the less chance anyone has to expose them. We need to be faster." As he talked, my mind drifted back to one particular memory. Grandma locking a small metal box and sliding it into the back of a closet, her expression unusually grim. "Some things are for the right eyes only," she'd said. Back then, I thought she was talking about old jewelry or letters. Now I wondered if she'd hidden something else. Something about Victor, or about the house, or about the will. So here's a question for you. If you found out a stranger with a shady past had quietly attached himself to your family's story, how far would you go to drag him into the light? Is a legacy still a legacy if you let someone like that rewrite it? 2 days later, I sat across from Jack in his office, a stack of papers between us. The city noise outside faded into a dull hum as he laid out the documents like pieces of a crime scene. "Okay," he said, exhaling slowly. "This is where it gets interesting." He pointed to the supposed signature of my grandmother authorizing the sale. At first glance, it looked right familiar loops, the same messy E at the beginning of Eleanor. But something about it felt hollow. Jack slid a folder toward me. "I asked you for old cards and letters. Let's put them to work." I pulled out birthday cards, holiday notes, even a post-it she'd once stuck to a jar of homemade jam. For a moment, I just stared at her handwriting, feeling a sharp ache in my chest. Every curve of ink was a piece of her voice I'd almost forgotten. Then I laid them beside the contract. At first, all I saw was chaos lines, loops, squiggles. But as I traced them with my finger, a pattern emerged. In my mind, it felt like watching a time-lapse. Grandma at the kitchen table signing a card with her usual flourish, then that same hand slowed down, weighed down by age, but still unmistakably hers. The signature on the sale document didn't move like that. It looked like someone trying to mimic her without understanding the rhythm. "Look at this," I said, my pulse quickening. "She always connects the E into the next letter like a ribbon. Here, it's stiff, separated, like someone had to pause. And the pressure she presses harder at the end, not the beginning. This one does the opposite." Jack leaned in, his lawyer's calm cracking into something closer to excitement. "Exactly. And the notary who allegedly witnessed this? Barely any online footprint. No office listed, just a P.O. box. I've seen this pattern before. It hit me then, not just that the signature might be forged, but what that meant about my sister and Victor. This wasn't an oops or a misunderstanding. Someone had sat down, taken a pen, and pretended to be my dead grandmother to erase my place in the family. My hands curled into fists. They didn't just steal a house, I whispered. They stole her voice. Jack nodded. If we can prove forgery, a lot of things unravel. The sale becomes invalid. Victor's investment is at risk. Your sister could face criminal charges. This stops being a family dispute and starts being a case. For a moment, I imagined my grandmother sitting beside me, watching me line up each signature. I could almost hear her. Ink doesn't lie. People do. The room felt smaller, heavier, but also sharper, like everything had finally come into focus. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my conversation with Hannah, pausing at one message where she'd written, "Grandma would have wanted this. You're just being dramatic." A bitter laugh escaped me. If Grandma really wanted this, I murmured, she wouldn't have needed a fake signature. So, let me throw this at you. Would you ever risk forging a dead relative's name on a legal document just to get what you think you deserve? And if you found out someone did that to you, would you be able to look the other way? Or would you burn everything down to prove the truth? Once we had the signatures lined up, and the notary's shady background on our radar, Jack shifted into a different mode. Less sympathetic friend. More predator who'd just spotted a weak spot in his opponent's armor. "We're not just going to file a complaint and hope for the best," he said, pacing his office. "We're going to confront him, but on our terms." "Confront Victor?" I echoed. "He'll just lie." Jack gave me a thin smile. "That's the point. People like him talk too much when they think they're in control, and when they talk, they make mistakes." He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a small digital recorder. "In this state," he added, "as long as one party to the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's legal. That'll be you." For a moment, my heart thudded uncomfortably. I wasn't used to this version of myself, the one who plotted, who prepared traps. But then I pictured the bulldozer tracks tearing up my grandmother's yard, and my hesitation evaporated. "What if he doesn't say anything useful?" I asked. "Then we still have the documents," Jack replied. "But I have a feeling Victor is more scared of losing money and reputation than he is of telling the truth." Before the meeting, he shared more of what he'd found. Victor had been involved in multiple off-market deals where elderly homeowners had mysteriously changed their wills or sold properties at suspiciously low prices right before they died. Lawsuits had popped up, then vanished as settlement agreements were quietly signed. "He's been playing this game for years," Jack said. "Only this time, he picked the wrong granddaughter." That night, I drove out to the neighborhood where my grandmother's brownstone stood. I parked down the street and just watched. Construction workers were gone for the day, but a temporary fence wrapped around the property, and a bright sign out front boasted about modern luxury coming soon. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, rage mixing with something much more fragile. "I'm sorry, Grandma," I whispered. "I should have checked in more. I should have been here." In my mind, she answered the way she always did when I blamed myself for anything. "You're here now, aren't you? That's what matters." As I turned to leave, a memory surfaced, her slipping a small metal box into the closet of the spare bedroom. My breath caught. I'd always assumed it was jewelry or old letters. But what if it was more? Proof? Insurance? I made a silent promise to myself. Once I had legal grounds to reclaim the house, I would tear that closet apart until I found it. Back home, I stared at the recorder Jack had given me. The plan was simple. I'd go with him to Victor's office, let Jack lead the legal talk, and wait for the moment Victor tried to minimize what happened. Or worse, admit he knew the signature was fake, or that Hannah had approached him first with the scheme. And Hannah. I didn't know whether to warn her, or let the shock break over her like a wave. She texted me again late that night. "You're really going to drag outsiders into this over a building full of dust and old memories? Grow up." I stared at the words until they blurred. Old memories. Funny how the person who called them old was the one desperate enough to sell them. So answer me honestly. If someone like Victor had quietly made a career out of preying on families like yours, would you be satisfied with just getting your property back? Or would you want to make sure he never did it to anyone else again? Victor's office was everything I expected. Sleek, expensive, and intentionally intimidating. Glass walls, polished floors, a receptionist who smiled like nothing bad ever happened here. But underneath all that shine, I could feel something rotten, like walking into a beautifully decorated room that still somehow smelled of smoke. I slipped the recorder into the inner pocket of my jacket before we went in. Jack gave me a quick, steady look. "You don't have to say much," he murmured. "Just be honest. Let him underestimate you." Victor greeted us with a practiced smile that never reached his eyes. "Jazz," he said smoothly, as if we were old friends. "I was wondering when you'd come by. I heard you're upset about the sale." "I'm not upset," I replied, taking a seat. "I'm informed." Jack wasted no time. He opened a folder and laid the copies of the deed and will on the table. "We're here because the sale appears to be based on a forged signature," he said. "The notary involved is questionable, and multiple samples of Eleanor's handwriting suggest this document isn't authentic." For a fleeting second, Victor's mask slipped, his gaze sharpened, then cooled. "That's a serious accusation," he said. "I was under the impression everything was done properly. Your sister handled the family side. I assumed she had authority." "Did she tell you the house was left to me?" I asked. He shifted in his chair. "She mentioned your name, yes. Said you were distant. That you wouldn't want the responsibility. That you'd be happy with some cash later." The words landed like punches. Distant. Happy with some cash later. That was the story she'd sold him. "And you just took her word for it?" I pressed. "No proof? No copy of the will?" Victor shrugged, but there was sweat collecting at his temple. "Hannah showed me something. I'm not a handwriting expert. I trusted what I saw." Jack slid another page forward. A list of previous complaints and quiet settlements linked to Victor's name. "Trust seems to be a recurring theme with you," Jack said coolly. "You trust documents that magically appear. You trust heirs who are in a hurry to sell. And somehow, that trust always ends with you turning a profit, while families lose what matters most." Victor's jaw tightened. "Careful," he said. "Defamation isn't cheap. Neither is fraud." Jack shot back. For a long moment, the room was silent, except for the faint ticking of a wall clock. Then Victor leaned forward, dropping his voice. "Look," he said. "No one wants this to get ugly. I've already invested in this property. Permits, contractors, plans. This could be a win-win if we're smart." "What exactly are you offering?" I asked, even though my stomach churned. "I'll cut you in," he said. "A generous payout, more than your sentimental share would ever be worth. You walk away. Your sister and I move forward. And no one has to drag your grandmother's name into court." There it was. The deal. The price of my silence. For a heartbeat, I thought of student loans, rent, the months I'd spent struggling to find steady design work. A big payout could fix a lot of things. But then another image pushed through. My grandmother standing on the front porch, pressing a key into my palm, saying, "This will always be your safe place." "So, you want me to help you profit off a crime?" I said quietly. "Because that's what this is if the signature is fake." "Allegedly fake," he corrected. "You're not in court yet." "Not yet," Jack echoed. "But we can be." Victor's charm flickered into open annoyance. "Think about your family," he said to me. "Do you really want your sister facing charges? Do you really want to be the one who dragged her there?" The guilt hit hard, because he knew exactly where to aim. But then I remembered Hannah's texts, her smug photo of the house under construction, the way she'd thrown my absence in my face as if I'd abandoned them, not the other way around. She dragged herself there when she picked up a pen and pretended to be someone who loved me, I said. "I'm just walking in after her." His face went pale. He knew he'd miscalculated. I stood, my voice steady now. "Here's what's going to happen. We'll give you a chance to unwind this quietly. Void the sale. Transfer the property back into my name, where it belonged in the first place. Or we take all of this." I nodded toward the papers and the unspoken presence of the recorder in my pocket to court, "and you get to explain your pattern to a judge." As we left his office, my legs felt shaky, but not from fear, from adrenaline. I'd just turned down more money than I'd ever seen in one place, but it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like the first real step toward justice. So, here's what I want to know. If someone offered you a life-changing amount of money to stay quiet about something this wrong, would you take it to protect yourself, or walk away to protect what's left of your soul? The next morning, my phone rang before the sun was fully up. I didn't need to see the caller ID to know who it was. There's a certain kind of dread that comes with only one person. I let it ring twice before answering. Jazz. Hannah's voice burst through the line, raw and shaky. What did you do? Good morning to you too, I said. If you mean talking to Victor and my lawyer about the forged signature used to sell the house that was left to me, then yes, I did that. He called me. She rushed on. He said you're threatening to take this to court. That you have some expert saying Grandma's signature isn't real. That you're dragging my name into this. Do you have any idea what you're doing? I'm doing what Grandma told me to do, I replied. I'm protecting what she left me. The thing you tried to sell behind my back. She scoffed, but the sound wobbled. You were never around, Jazz. I dealt with the doctors, the bills, the house repairs, the guilt trips. I deserved something. She always made you feel special, like the chosen one. I was supposed to just stand there and clap? There it was, finally said out loud. The resentment that had been simmering under every eye roll, every snide joke. So your solution, I asked carefully, was to erase me? To fake her name? To team up with some vulture who visits old women in care facilities and convince yourself it was responsible? I didn't fake anything, she snapped. Too fast. Then, quieter. I just signed what they put in front of me. Linda handled it. Victor said everything was standard. I figured Grandma wanted to help. She always worried about money. You knew the will, I said. You'd seen it. You knew the house wasn't yours to sell. Silence pressed through the line like a weight. When she finally spoke again, her voice had lost its edge. If this goes to court, she whispered. If they say I'm involved in forgery, if this goes on my record, Jazz, please, I could lose my job. I could. You could have lost me, I cut in. You might have already. The weeks that followed were a blur of filings and hearings and family fallout. Aunt Rebecca called to beg me to keep this in the family, warning me that once lawyers get involved, things can never go back to normal. My parents left tense voicemails about misunderstandings and not ruining your sister's life over a house. I listened to them all, then replayed Eleanor's voice in my head, telling me not to be polite with people who treated my safety like a bargaining chip. When we finally walked into the courtroom, it felt like stepping onto a stage I never wanted to be on. On one side, me and Jack, our table covered in neatly organized evidence. On the other, Hannah and her lawyer, and further down, Victor with his own expensive counsel. Hannah wouldn't look at me at first. She stared straight ahead, shoulders rigid. Victor looked smaller without his office behind him. The judge listened as Jack laid out the timeline. Eleanor's clear will leaving the brownstone to me. Victor's visits to the care facility. The rushed sale. The notary with a suspicious pattern. The expert's conclusion that the signature on the deed did not match Eleanor's natural handwriting. The handwriting expert testified, pointing out the same differences Jack and I had studied at his desk. The pressure, the connections between letters, the stroke order. Words like inconsistent, unlikely, and simulated filled the air. Linda, the notary, was called but didn't appear. Her lawyer submitted a statement instead, which did her more harm than good. Every absence, every evasive answer, made the forgery more obvious. During a break, Hannah finally turned toward me. Her eyes were rimmed red, her mascara smudged. I didn't think it would go this far, she said hoarsely. I was tired of always feeling like the extra one. Grandma's favorite this, Grandma's special that. You got the house. I got what? Guilt and bills. For a moment, I saw past 29-year-old Hannah in a blazer to the teenager who'd cried on my bed after her first breakup, to the little girl who'd crawled into my side when thunderstorms scared her. It hurt. All of it hurt. You could have talked to me, I said, keeping my voice low. You could have asked for help. You could have told me you felt overlooked. Instead, you chose the one thing you knew would cut the deepest. You sold the only place I ever felt completely safe, and you lied to yourself about what that meant. Tears spilled over her lashes. If you push this, if I get charges, you got yourself into this, I said, not unkindly. I'm not the one who picked up the pen. When the judge finally ruled, the words felt both enormous and strangely simple. The sale was voided. The property, based on Eleanor's will and the proven forgery, reverted to me. The court recommended that the matter be referred to the district attorney for potential charges related to the forgery and the notary's conduct. Victor's pattern of deals was noted on the record, his carefully maintained image cracked. Hannah, under pressure, and with Jack arguing that Eleanor wouldn't have wanted her granddaughter in prison, ended up with fines, mandatory restitution, and a permanent mark that would make some doors harder to open. She moved away a few months later, putting physical distance on top of the emotional distance that already yawned between us. Some relatives blamed me. Some quietly thanked me. Most just didn't know what to say. The day I walked back into Eleanor's brownstone, with a real legal key in my hand, the place looked like a half-finished sentence. Construction had been halted mid-thought. Walls open, flooring ripped up, plans taped to the bare studs. Dust hung in the air. But underneath the mess, I could still feel the heartbeat of the home I'd grown up in. In the spare bedroom closet, behind a row of neatly folded quilts that somehow hadn't been touched, I found the small metal box exactly where I remembered. The lock was old and stubborn, but it opened with a bit of pressure and a lot of emotion. Inside, nestled among old photos and a pair of earrings I'd loved as a kid, was an envelope with my name on it. I unfolded Eleanor's shaky handwriting and read, "If you're reading this, it means the house has passed to you. I trust you to protect it, even if it means standing against people you love. Love isn't blind, Jazz. It sees the truth and chooses it anyway. Don't let anyone convince you that keeping quiet is the same as keeping the peace." I laughed and cried at the same time, sitting cross-legged on the dusty floor. In the months that followed, I decided not to turn the house into a shrine to pain. Instead, I renovated it slowly, turning it into a small community space and design studio. Kids from the neighborhood came by for art workshops. Teenagers used the front room as a quiet place to study. I kept Eleanor's favorite armchair in the corner, a soft, worn witness to the fact that her house was still doing what she wanted it to do, protect people who needed it. People sometimes ask me if it was worth it, dragging my sister into court, exposing family ugliness, choosing a house over the illusion of harmony. I don't think I chose a house over a sister. I think I chose honesty over a lie we were all supposed to swallow. So now I'll leave you with the question that still lingers every time I turn the key in that front door. When family betrays you this deeply, is revenge just about watching them fall? Or is it about reclaiming the parts of yourself they tried to sell off? And if you were standing on that porch with the key in your hand, would you walk away for the sake of appearances? Or would you do exactly what I did and fight for the legacy of the one person who never asked you to be anything but yourself? Our team at Pro Revenge Stories is dedicated to crafting meaningful, emotionally engaging stories that leave a lasting impact. We promise that all stories on this channel are fictional and are created solely to share life lessons and positive educational messages with our viewers. This script highlights important educational values, such as respecting others' boundaries, understanding the consequences of greed, and choosing honesty over deception through dramatic family conflict. It encourages viewers to reflect on their own decisions, relationships, and sense of responsibility. Our goal is to turn intense family drama into useful life lessons that help audiences grow wiser and more compassionate.